Good morning. We are live. It's 10 o'clock. We had a date. It's time for Midweek Motivation Live with me, your host, Patrick Lee. We're going to be talking about the difference between the power of the pen and the sword and the difference between them. There's the statement that came out many, many years ago that actually many people quote this that says the pen is mightier than the sword. We're going to talk about that today, choosing your weapons wisely. Today on Midweek Motivation Live, we will be back right after this. Good morning. I hope everyone is doing all right today. This is Patrick Lee, your host of Midweek Motivation Live, coming to you from Studio One, the downtown tower, First Bank Southwest Tower on the 18th floor, my office. I hope you guys are doing well. It's a little cloudy outside today, overcast. It's in the high 50s already. I'm sure it's going to be a nice day. I think we're supposed to get into the high 60s today, but with a little bit of cloud cover, and that's okay with me. We've had a nice couple of days. People already tuning in. Hello, Sal. Multiple people already watching the show. I've read this quote a while back, and many of you have heard it many, many times. It says the pen is mightier than the sword. Good morning, Gina. It's so good to see you on here again as well. I love it. The pen is mightier than the sword. That was actually a quote by a man named Edward Bulwer Lytton in 1839. And I want to talk to you about that today. He's the one that said the pen is mightier than the sword. So that's over almost 200 years ago. This man said that. And it's been quoted time and time and time again throughout the ages ever since. And I think that it's actually had an effect on society, on us as individuals, us as people, that has kind of caused a change in the culture of America for sure, and also the world. And it's been something that's been on my mind for quite some time. And I was doing some research and going down a rabbit hole, and I'd visited another website, and I came across this other quote that said the pen is not mightier than the sword. The pen has never shed blood in battle, but the sword has never written an acceptable law. But the man who wields the sword is far more apt to go further in life, blah, 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 than the person who wields the pen. And then I made a social media post a couple of months back, and a few other people, it came across one of my quote websites, maybe in an app, and it said it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. And I actually made a new version of that, and I shared it on social media, multiple sites, and it actually got a lot of traction. And many people said that, hey, that I've never heard that, but it's pretty profound. But then it's been said for it's been said for generations. It's an old quote. I certainly didn't make that one up. While I do make up some pretty good quotes myself, most of them are Patrickisms. We'll talk about them in another day and another time. But I didn't make that one up. It's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. But this other quote in this other website I was reading that came back, and it contradicted this quote by Edward Lytton about the pen being mightier than the sword, and it's just had me thinking. And so I put together this show today to kind of delve into that a little bit, and I've titled the show "Choose Your Weapons." So welcome to today's episode. We're going to delve into this debate surrounding the true might of the pen and the sword, and I put together a few points for you. Number 1.1, the limitations of the pen and the sword. While the pen is a powerful tool, and we know it is, I have two different pens here, and they serve two entirely different purposes. One, this particular pen is a Chicago Title gel ink pen. I don't know. Where's the camera? There it is. There's the camera from Chicago Title. Love this pen. It has a nice rubber tip and a rubber grip. Easy to hold. It writes well. Love Chicago Title. They're not a sponsor of the show, but this is a great pen. And this pen writes on paper. It takes notes on paper. And you know me as a high I, I'm a stacker. I write down. I have a lot of notebooks. I keep them around me at all times. Stacks of paper, different kind of books that I write in, journals and books. I always have them near me. And different books mean different things, and I write different kind of notes in other things. And then recently, I won this new one, and this pen is a special pen. This is the Friction Pilot erasable pen, and this pen is made for writing in my new rocket book. This is a new book that I actually won at a nonprofit in a silent auction, actually bidding against a very good friend. Beth, I'm sorry, I won this particular time. You usually win, but in this notebook, you can take your notes down. You can scan them. Every page has a QR code on it. You can automatically train through an app. You can train your phone, and when you scan that page, it'll automatically convert what you have written into text and save it in notes, in Dropbox, in Google Docs, where have you, as you train that about 6 different places. So this particular pen writes in this book only. So I have multiple pens that serve different purposes, and I didn't even intend to use this today, but this is my third pen. This is another pen that a friend gave me, and this is one of those pens that has a stylus on the tip. And when you're using tablet or phone, a lot of times you need to use a stylus, and you can actually pop the ink out. So there are multiple different types of pens, and I don't really say that to show that, but there are limitations of the pen. The pen is a powerful tool. It's made for writing down the thoughts and the ideas and the notes that come from the mind of the person who wields it only. The pen may be a powerful tool for communication, but it has not won historic battles for justice. Now, the original pen, the feather quill, perhaps, that was written to write the documents that founded our country, like the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights, and all of the amendments that came along with that. You know that our Constitution was not ratified, until all of the amendments were added, at which point many of the leaders of our country came together and agreed to finish signing that Constitution. So many of those were not was not ratified until that. So the pen at that time was a feather quill, was still with black ink, but it was written to write down the laws of man. But was it really the pen that had the power? Hello, Pete, Roberta, other people tuning in. You may have missed me in the previous show. We were doing another show. We had technical difficulties. My phone overheated in a previous episode in the sunlight, and had to restart. Technical difficulties. So glad to be back in the studio today with all of y'all watching. So while the pen may have the power to write down the notes, the ideas, and even laws, is it really the pen that has the power to change people's activity, their behaviors? Similarly, or conversely, does the sword have the power to do that? The sword may protect our borders when we choose to use it to protect our borders, but is it the sword that signs the Bill of Rights or the Constitution or the laws that we currently are writing? Is it the sword that writes them, or is it the pen? Does the sword show up at school with you and your rocket book? And is it the sword that writes in the rocket book, or the notebook, or the school book paper, or is it the pen? Is it the sword that takes notes and inventory of how you are going to live your life? Both the pen and the sword have their place, but they also have their limitations in achieving certain goals, right? So I took down just a couple of notes while we were talking about these. And of course, this number one, choose your weapons wisely. Both are limited. While the pen has the power to write the laws, does the pen have the power to enforce the laws? The pen has the power to write down our ideas, our thoughts, our business plans, our goals and dreams. But is it the pen that actually causes us to go out and achieve those or enforce those? Or is it the sword? Is it the activity? And I'm going to relate the sword today pretty much in some manners and ways of thinking to physical activity. And I'm going to relate the pen to our thought processes and goals and dreams, but the sword to the actual activity. The sword may protect our borders, but it's not going to write down our goals and dreams. The pen may write them down, but it's our activity that's actually going to put that into practice, right? Point number two, the pen and the sword are codependent. They are both in codependency of each other. The codependent relationship between the sword and the pen, um, because they both cause things to come to fruition, but they both do it in different manners. But sometimes the pen needs the sword to enforce what it has written, but sometimes the sword is not wielded because there is nothing to motivate it to be wielded, if that makes sense. Controversial statements and writings have sparked battles in the past. Many of our laws in our country and countries around the world have wars have broken out, riots have broken out over written laws, statements, things that people write, books, social media posts, things that people write that rally people to violence, right? Hello, Ann. Hey, Cody. Good to see y'all all watching. So while the pen may have the power to write down the thoughts, and our digits, our thumbs, have the power as well. You can include your hands, your fingers, your thumbs as the power of the pen when we are tempted to comment on social media posts, especially on controversial social media sites that many of us love to get on when we have a few minutes. And just wade through the muck and the mire of people's comments, the things that they write, the hateful things, the lies, the sheer malice that is spread through social media sites, the fake news media. That, yes, you know, that tells you who I am. The fake news media that I choose to stay away from. But those words and things that are written are so harmful. They're written to rile you up into violence and stir you into action. It's through these kind of battles that new laws and changes are brought about. Many times we're stirred into riot when the people riot and they're risen to come against something, protest wrongful laws, wrongful statements, wrongful choices that have been made in our nation and other nations. People are drawn to violence, and at that point they unsheath the sword of activity, the sword of response to illegal laws or illegal law. Is that really that's an oxymoron? However, it fits so many of our laws that we have in place right now. People are drawn to riot and protest against wrongful things that are written. Is that when we should turn to the sword? And I don't want to just chase that rabbit. That's not what we're talking about today. The pen and the sword can work together to bring about meaningful change when both are used together in the proper manner. And that is the writing of the goals, the dreams, the plans, the laws, and the unsheathing of the sword to go out and defeat the enemies that are in your way and to bring about the activity that is going to cause those goals, dreams, laws to come to fruition and to come to be, right? To pass. Where is the real power, the importance of choice? Real might lies in the hand that knows when to pick up the pen and when to choose the sword instead. It's essential to recognize our strengths and abilities and determine which tool is more efficient in a given situation. I watch a lot of videos on weapons, and now the weapon of choice in America is the AR-15. I own multiple pistols, swords. I own a couple real swords. My daughter owns some swords. Other people I know own swords. Some people I know collect swords. I also collect pins. Gina's watching the show, has given me a couple of wonderful pins that I absolutely love. Expensive pins, nice pins. But we need to learn to recognize our strengths and abilities in determining which one is more efficient in the given situation. And that comes down to us learning how to make informed choices based on the circumstances that we have presented to us, right? We have to learn how to do that. It's the mind of man that causes us this reasoning, this knowledge that we have that causes us to be above the animals that act instinctively. They know how to go out, hunt, and kill. Animals don't write laws. Animals don't write, you know, the rules of the jungle. They just know them and they act upon them because it's part of their nature. Humans are the only ones that actually write things down and try to force people to adapt to that or to be beholden to that by what was written down on a piece of paper. And that's what I was saying at the beginning of the show. Over the last couple of thousand years, or a couple of hundred years especially, written laws have caused such a major change in our culture, in our nations, and how we handle ourselves. And it seems to me that over the last decade or two, that these things have mattered to me more, that we realize the lack of power behind the pen. And the more we are starting to see the power of the sword coming into play when it comes down to rioting in the streets, when it comes down to people teaching you that it's your actions that are going to do more than you say, right? How many of us have heard the statement, who you are and how you act speaks so loudly, I can't hear what you are saying. You can write down your goals and dreams and the things that you want and rules and regulations for your business, for those people that are under you or that you're helping, that you have the charge with to help train. But it's actually your actions. No matter what you write down, it's your actions that are going to cause them to come in line with what result you're trying to get, right? Is it the written law that says all employees must wash your hands before they go back to work in every restaurant and food service and bar that you walk into? That's going to be the sign on the sink. Does every employee that works in a restaurant, a food service location, or a bar, do they wash their hands before they go back to work? You and I both know that answer is probably no. We have rules and regulations written down, signs that are on doors that say pull or push. And how many of us have seen, or how many of you have walked into a door abruptly and spilled coffee all over yourself because you thought you should push the door when you needed to pull the door? The written rule is only as good as the action that is taken. And we, for my next point, must learn to adapt to the different circumstances that we are faced with in life. Our circumstances change and our methods need to adapt accordingly. There will be times where we are tempted to just pick up the pen, the phone, the laptop, and fire off an email, a new rule, or something that we are never going to allow you to do again, or something that we are always going to do. But how many of you know that circumstances change? And while we are tempted to do that, sometimes we should pause, take a moment to reflect, and think about how we need to move forward. Comparing the pen and the sword, which serves different purposes, could be redundant if you don't learn how to use the right one. Sometimes you just say, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to enforce it. Sometimes you have a knee-jerk reaction and say, I'm just going to go out and force this change. And then later on, once we determine if it works or not, then we're going to write down that rule and see how that works. How many of you know that you have to learn to adapt to each circumstance individually and determine what is the best way to move forward? Comparing the pen and the sword, which serves different purposes, can really be confusing but you need to make that choice first. And here's an example. And we have to learn also about how do we relate this to other people in our lives. I was talking with a great friend yesterday. He's actually been on the show, and he had just recently had a conference down in South Texas, and someone was a visitor to this event and got very hateful towards another regular attender of this event, and kind of told them, said some rude things to that person. And my friend's wife went to get in the middle of that and sort it out and make peace. And one person got belligerent and started saying a lot of hateful things, got violent with her. And my friend had to go get in the middle of that and eject the people from the event. And he used great restraint. I'm so proud of him for not letting a past nature of his cause him to use the sword, unsheath that weapon, and use that to take care of business, because he is a man of immediate action. Most of the time I talk to him, it's all about the latest action he has taken. He is more of a guy that says, I'm going to act first and ask for forgiveness later, than the person who hesitates every time and says, I'm going to ask for permission, like a rule or a law or a statement saying that I can move forward. And I just had to tell him how proud I was. And how many of you have people like that in our own lives, that they come into our lives or into a conversation or into a certain circumstance and start telling you what you should do, how you should react, or what the law is, regarding that situation. And you have to determine, is this person a pen person, or are they a sword person? And I actually choose to run around a little bit more with sword people than I do pen people, because for a good reason. Good morning, Lisa. Also, Lisa knows, Cody knows, Pete knows. So there are some people in your lives that are pen people, and they are thinkers and law writers and peacemakers. We are called to be peacemakers, not peacekeepers. Just don't get those two things mistaken. But sometimes the peacemaker has to do that through the power of the sword, not the pen. And we have to learn how to adapt to all of that as well. Hey, shout out to Martin. Cody, tell Martin I said, hey, bro, need to see you soon, man. Hey, come on. So we will do that. But we have people that come into our lives, and some of them are friends, and some of them just want to inject something, an idea or a law or some legalism into the conversation. And you just have to kind of take out the sword and cut that out of your life. Say, I'm not going to accept that. I don't listen to that, and I'm not going to have it. But some of us value other people higher or lower based on the type of person they are. And is that person that brings in, hey, while you're wanting to go in this direction, we need to think about this rule or this regulation that says how we should react in that situation. And that person can be actually adding incredible value to you as you make your decision. But based on the type of person they are, they're either a thinker, a rule keeper, a pen person, or are they a person of action? You have to determine, am I going to limit their influence in my life or their effect in my decision making because of the value I have put on that person? Maybe that person is giving me wise counsel, and I need to sheath my sword and pay attention and learn when to follow the rules of the particular jungle or situation that I'm in. It's important to appreciate the unique value of the pen and the sword and adapt our approach to our decision making, sometimes based on each individual situation. Should we value one above the other? I think it really does come down. It really does come down to the situation. I truly do. Should we value one person above the other? Um, I don't know that we necessarily value that one person above the other, but we learn based on their track record of contribution how much importance or credence we should give to what they want to add to the situation, if you're catching my drift. And then number 0.5, we need to avoid adding value judgments. Instead of assigning more worth to one tool over the other, it's crucial to appreciate both of them for what they can do. I love that I can take notes in this book. I can copy them down. I can create, convert them into text, and my thoughts can immediately be converted into something that's savable, that's printable, that I can put in an email and shoot out to people. So there is value in the pen. That's how we get our thoughts and our ideas onto paper, into the computer. And you can use Dragon Dictation. It's been around forever. Don't get me wrong. But the pen, we've talked at the beginning of the show, the pen is the tool used, whatever the tool used for you to get your ideas, your thoughts, your dreams, your goals down on paper. And then the enforcement is the action. The sword is the action that you take. So by avoiding value judgments, either over people or over the tool, we can embrace the strengths and limitations of both. And sometimes we understand that I can only write so much. And then I have to take action. I saw a post yesterday on social media. Curtis Schul, I think it was Curtis Schul. I'm going to give him credit for it. And he just made a post based on a comment that said, how can and this is a real estate related, how can a person who's never sold a home and has never memorized a script make a post about real estate that goes viral, and then all of a sudden they're invited to speak on stage in front of thousands of people as a thought leader or as a brilliant person, and get paid to be a presenter when they've never actually done the work to support that lucky comment they happen to have made. And unfortunately, many of you know someone like that. You've read a book by someone and thought, wow, this book really was fluff, and it didn't sound like they had any idea what they were talking about. Or you've been to an event and someone was touted on stage as being a high-powered speaker, and you went and you kind of walked out during that speaker and went to the lobby and got coffee and met with some other people and had a good time. Because you realize that person on stage may have been invited for a certain reason, or a comment that they made, or a book that they were promoting, but they had never actually done the work that they were on stage speaking about. And it was brutally clear as you were listening to them that they were not going to add value to you, and you just got up and walked out. I've been there. I hope that I have not been one of those people. I try to add value, but there are times that those people, you try not to be one of them, but you certainly know when you encounter one of them, right? There's just no substance. They've written something that may have been profound. It may have been nice and easy to read. They may be easy on the eyes and they look good in public, and maybe they're a great speaker, but they really don't have a lot to say. But by avoiding the judgment between the pen and the sword, we learn to embrace what they actually have to benefit. Hey, Debbie, good to see you watching again as well. Then we have to learn that ultimately it comes down to a choice. And we have to make our own choice between the pen and the sword in every situation. It's essential to make the choice that aligns with our abilities and our values and the desired outcome that we want to see come into place, right? If we write down rules and laws and regulations and guidelines for our team, for our business, for our circle of friends, for our family as the leaders of our home, we have to choose, are we going to rule with the pen, laws that are seldom enforced, or are we going to be the person of action who rules with action and seldom has any of them written down? Don't let others dictate that choice. Ultimately, it's your choice to make, right? It's important to recognize the limitations and strengths of both the pen and the sword. The choice to choose which one is up to each one of us individually. Which one has the real power? That's up to you. By understanding the codependent relationship between the sword and the pen, making informed choices and adapting to changing circumstances, we can harness the true power of both tools, the pen and the sword. Remember, the choice is yours to make. based on what is most effective and meaningful in the given situation. And then my final plug right here to add to this argument, the personal rights of the people shall not be infringed. And I wrote another law, not a law, just another comment in my mind that says, where does this limitation of the power of both of them come from? Is the laws that are written, are they limited by the unenforceability of the people, or of the people in charge over us legally to enforce them, or is the power of the sword more powerful? When it comes down to the infringement of the rights of the people, do we abide by the laws that are written because someone with a pen wrote them? Or do we abide by the laws that we have in place because they are the right thing to do based on the law of the land, the battle between good and evil, right? There are evil forces out there all around us every day telling us to act out, to do the wrong thing. But then there are also laws that are in place that are out there for a reason to teach us to do the right thing. And sometimes you just know to do the right thing because it's the right thing, right? To have compassion, to take care of the widows and the orphans and those that are less fortunate, and not allow evil people to take advantage of others, to defend your home, to defend your family and the families and homes of your friends, and your right to worship and your right to assemble and peaceably protest illegal laws and things. And I'm not saying anything about that other than this. Sometimes the pen has been used to write down laws for a good reason, but it's really the enforceability of the people that wrote those laws that comes into question. Are they written just because someone wants to make money off of what they write? They don't have the power to enforce what they wrote, or is it because it's the right thing to do? And I believe that as citizens, as people, it's always the choice for us to choose. Is it time for us to write another law or abide by a law or a rule or a regulation that is not able to be enforced? Or is it the choice for us to make, to stand up and say, I will not comply, because it flies in the face of the difference between right and wrong? So anyway, that was my final thought on this. The personal rights of the people shall not be infringed. And the choice really comes down to, are the laws, are the rules, are the regulations something that are enforceable, or are they not? Are they not? So there you have it, folks. I'm going to jump off of that rabbit trail really fast and end this show, because that could go on and on and on. And that was not the intent of the show. But we have multiple tools. We need to learn how to use them properly. There is a time for us to write down thoughts, dreams, goals, and action, and the actions we should take. And then there's also time where we need to just take action. And there's a time and a place for both. But I believe that action, the sword, ultimately trumps the pen when it comes to managing your business, to being successful in sales, to going for the things that you want in life. I think that the sword trumps the pen on every one of the points I've made today. You can write, but if you can't enforce or don't take action, it is just words on paper. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Midweek Motivation Live. I hope this discussion has shed light on the power of the pen and the sword. See, I wrote these notes with these little intros and outros. Isn't this neat? Don't you just love this? I hope this has inspired you to consider the role of the sword and the pen. And the bonus tip today: choose wisely, my friends. Choose wisely which one you are going to use in each situation. Hey, remember, courage begins at the end of your comfort zone. Get out there today. Get a little uncomfortable. Maybe it's time to unsheath that sword and take some good action. Until next time, this has been Patrick Lee with Midweek Motivation Live, saying bye-bye. Love you. See you later.